think that if not everyone, close to everyone is on the call. So I just wanted to welcome you all here. As most of you know, I'm Justin McMurray. I'm one of the venture builders at Beanstalk. I'm joined by my colleague Brett, who'll give you a wave, and the two of us will help facilitate this very interesting and different cohort meetup session. So I'll just take you through some of the formalities before we kick off and we start a bit of a chat with the Dairy Australia folk. So before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. I'd like to acknowledge the Dharawal people down where I'm based in the Illawarra region of New South Wales, where there are often power shortages. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that might be joining us today. Just a reminder, this is a different type of cohort meetup, so obviously there are some external people here, but that's the whole point of today's conversation. You know, I'd really encourage the innovators to ask some questions and talk about their ventures. You will be introducing yourselves. Of course, anything that's ultra sensitive, you might not want to talk about on this call. Definitely keen to see all your lovely faces as well if you're happy to keep your video on. So just to recap, we're up to week 10 of 12. So for the Dairy Australia folk, this is our second cohort of innovators that we're taking through the Drought Venture Studio, and we're already up to week 10, which is amazing and has gone too quickly. This session will be an Ask Me Anything session. Week number 11 is an important week for the cohort, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. So a quick recap the week ahead, and then we'll be diving into the Ask Me Anything. So yeah, getting into the pointy end of the program for everyone, as you would well know. Obviously, we've got this week's cohort meetup. You'll still have your 30-minute one-on-one sessions with your VBs, your venture builders, over the next couple of days. And the pitch practice sessions that will be happening this Friday. A reminder that this pitch is kind of extra important because it will be the last opportunity that we'll have to assess where you and your venture, your innovation is up to as we select the top 12 within this cohort that will then be eligible for selection to go into the second phase of the Drought Venture Studio program. So yeah, this week is really important, and it was good to see so many pitches are getting better and better and better. And yeah, from the next 2 weeks, as we split into those two groups of 12, we'll be having slightly more focused sessions and slightly different flavored sessions for those two groups. Yeah, just a recap here on this slide that I've already spoken about, so I can move forward. Okie doke. So I've got formalities out of the way, and very excited to have a different type of cohort meetup this week. Very, very excited and happy to have some of the folk from Dairy Australia join us today. And then we'll sort of open this up into a more broad conversation where we'll be able to ask some questions and really just have some general discussions. I understand that not necessarily every one of your innovations is directly related to the dairy sector. Some of them might be livestock related, or others just might have more general conversations about the research environment or big trends happening in the industry. So we can either keep it specific or general, but yes, it's a great opportunity to have a chat with these folk from the sector. So just the format, I will shortly ask the Dairy Australia representatives to introduce themselves, and then we will invite each innovator to introduce themselves as well, so just yourself and your innovation and what you're working on. And then we'll go into an AMA or Ask Me Anything, and you can just raise your hand in Teams to ask a question. Or if there are any topics or themes or trends that are just on your mind, feel free to drop them into the chat, and myself or Brett will be keeping an eye on that, and then we can go from there. Okay, so going ahead, it looks like I can see Emily, I can see Jay, I can see Andy, and I can see Alyssa as well. This is great. Thank you all four for joining us. Emily, because you're at the top of the list, would you mind introducing yourself and telling the group a little bit about your role at Dairy Australia?
Sure. Hi, my name's Emily Samuel. I'm the Head of Innovation at Dairy Australia. So my role at Dairy Australia is to look at the non-traditional pathway for innovation. So that's anything ag tech or startup entrepreneurial sort of pathways. I help to connect businesses and entrepreneurs and startups with the relevant people within the organisation, but also am the first point of call if you want to know anything about the dairy industry, et cetera, et cetera. That's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Emily. Alyssa, do you want to go next?
Hi, thanks everyone for having us. I'm excited to hear what you have to tell us. I am the National Lead for Climate and Environment, but most relevant to this group means that I look after all of the technical and strategic work that supports the dairy industry to adapt to climate change, including increasing frequency of drought and decreasing availability of water. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alyssa. Jay.
Thanks, Justin. Great to meet all of you. My name is Jay Modi. I'm the Head of Research Investments at Dairy Australia. So I lead a team of 5 national leads who work across different aspects of dairy farming. So climate and environment is one of them. Feed-based and nutrition is another one. Soils and water, and animals and milking. So across these domains, each of our national leads is responsible for creating an overarching vision strategy in terms of what research investments we need to make in the future to ensure that farmers are successful, increase in productivity, increase in profitability and sustainability. So it's a pretty key role that the team plays in ensuring all of that is met. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. And lastly, Andy.
Good day, everyone. Thanks for having me. Andy Hancock, Sustainable Animal Care Manager at Dairy Australia. So background as a dairy vet, I've worked in academics, commercial, so Zoetis, international, government, so in the CBO unit at AgVic, as well as now at Dairy Australia. And I guess I'm here to talk, to cover the animal side of things. So my role provides oversight of this animal care commitment of the Australian Dairy Sustainability Framework, which includes areas such as animal health and welfare, biosecurity, antimicrobial stewardship, surplus calves. I also do a lot of work in the virtual fencing space. I'm possibly standing in for Steph Bullen, who's in the research and innovation team and looks after a lot of the animal health and welfare stuff there. She's on leave, but we work very closely with R&I, and I've got a bit of a background in this sort of outcomes research, business development stuff. So hopefully I can be of assistance.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andy. Yes, I suspect there's going to be a fair bit of conversation about virtual fencing today. And at least one other about innovators is right smack bang in the middle of something relating to animal welfare and disease. So that is really, really pertinent. Okay, I'm going to pick on some innovators to introduce themselves for starters. we do have plenty of time today, so I'd be happy for the innovators to take a couple of minutes if they'd like. What I'd ask is, just introduce yourself and let us know where you're currently located. Introduce your innovation, solution, venture, however you want to frame it. And I'd really encourage you to maybe even just flag a couple of the challenges and the things that you're trying to deal with at the moment and you're trying to solve for. The rest of the people on the call can get a sense of where some of the conversations might go to. So I'm going to pick on the gents from AgX to kick off the intro. How about Sam, do you want to start us off and then Callum can follow up after you?
Sure. So hi everyone, thank you for coming today. Really appreciate it, firstly. My name's Sam Orban. Currently down in Kiama, so Illawarra region. Also had issues with blackouts as well. So myself and Callum are from the AgX team, and we're developing what we want to call like the next generation of virtual fencing. So to save you two descriptions of our startup, I'll send it to Callum to kind of give you an overview of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, for sure. Callum, I grew up in Australia on a cattle ranch, but over in Boston now, hence why I use the word ranch too much. But we're essentially developing virtual fencing technology. We've been speaking to a lot of beef farms, but also really looking to dairy, hence why we're super interested in this call. A big area that we're differentiating ourselves on is the use of muscle stimulation technology to essentially control the animal's movements. I think we're really interested, kind of today to potentially hear about a little bit around the regulation. Obviously, it's been a bit of an issue in Australia with kind of the electric shock devices. And then we're also developing a lot on really reducing the bottlenecks of the industry of more so potentially beef farms, but dealing with larger operations and not having to set up base stations and upfront costs. And then also really looking to kind of make the technology more reliable, where we also have some additional patents in the area to kind of increase the reliability of our products. Reliability is one of the key things that we're really trying to work into our product. But then the second thing, which we've run preliminary trials on, is that kind of whole muscle stimulation technology to try to deliver a lot better kind of tactile sensation. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Callum and Sam. I'm sure the crowd might have some more specific questions about AgX and the technology that you're developing as well, because it's super interesting. Next person on my screen is Sarah. So Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself and your innovation?
Yeah, thank you, Justin. And yeah, thanks again, Dairy Australia, for your time, and hi to everyone else here. So I am largely based in Ballarat at Federation University in Victoria, and through this Beanstalk Drought Venture Studio, we have launched our company called SwabTech, which essentially is looking at creating tests that farmers can use to breed disease resistance into their animals. So because my background has largely been in sheep production and parasitic worms, we're really focused on that area at the moment, and we've got a saliva-based test that producers can use to breed worm resistance into their flock. So we're just trialling that on farm at the moment. But yeah, I'm not sure whether that's of interest to the dairy industry, so it'd be good to hear how much worms impact the dairy industry and what's already there in terms of breeding technologies. So thanks.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I'm sure even if you're not quite ready to tackle cattle just yet, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that we can learn from people here today. Thanks, Sarah. And I might just post in the chat once we get going some of the venture names as well. So, Sam and Callum are with AgX, Sarah is with SwabTech, And next on my screen, Caitlin. Caitlin, do you want to give us a little bit of an intro?
Thanks, Justin. And I'm really excited about this opportunity to ask questions about dairy industry. The things that our team are particularly interested in relate to any forms of liquid waste in the dairy industry. So we're a startup that's come out of Australian National University. So I'm Canberra-based, and our technology that we're building is designed to harvest valuable resources out of liquid waste. So there's a lot of technology out there that is super successful in harvesting clean water out of waste. So you can sort of, pick and choose what you want to do there in terms of pulling out clean water for reuse. But what we're doing is a little bit different because we're targeting other valuable resources. So our main work, say, for example, is with the mining industry, pulling out high value metals from liquid waste, but we've got a whole pile of parts that are relevant to nutrients. We're not sure what are the volumes and what are the compositions of waste that would be relevant to, the dairy industry in Australia, and would, producers be interested in pulling anything out? So I have lots of questions and I'm really excited to connect. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Caitlin. And Mark, do you want to go next?
G'day everybody, really nice to meet you all. My name is Mark Dunn. I'm from Landmark Automation. And our technology is called SmartGate. It's effectively a local edge compute camera that identifies species as they're walking down a laneway and then opens or shuts the gate. So denying access to feral animals. So, all of the feral animals in the landscape, wild pigs, camels, donkeys, all the rest of it, excluding access to resources, whether that be watering points on the rangelands, or whether it be licks or fodder or other more valuable resources that we're putting in place. And as an aside, of course, the added benefits are then, we can also do body conformation scoring, weight estimation, and all of that with these NLIS for auto drafting. So the combination of a standalone, rugged, robust camera with an automated gate then opens up almost endless possibilities for being able to control your livestock and ferals on your land. So really interested to sort of get a feel for the size of the feral animal problem in dairy farms. Suspect it may not be as much because of the fencing, but thanks very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. And lastly, I think John, you might be the last to introduce yourself.
But not least, g'day, I'm John Reid. I'm in South Australia. The closest I get to dairy is opening the fridge from I'm usually in the morning. We're out in the rangeland, so but our product is the forage and herbivore management camera. So it's an Edge AI camera that counts livestock and pest herbivores and also measures the condition of vegetation, so key forage plants. And so designed mainly for sort of rangeland or large acre, broad acre farmers and things like that. There may be some applications for the dairy industry in looking at, we can also use this data to help quantify and calibrate Landsat imagery and things like that, so we know what the condition of the country is at different times and which herbivores are sort of causing any declines in forage condition. We see a main market in accreditation. So for organic or other sort of biodiversity positive accreditation that, I guess the dairy industry could be interested in, we'll provide information on management of pest species and condition of the country. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, John. So, so these are a handful of innovators that are part of a current cohort. Beanstalk throughout Venture Studio. To the Dairy Australia folk, you can already see a fair bit of diversity and some very, very different solutions. As through context, some of the innovations are very early stage, some are maybe starting to ready to get to market. Most, if not all of them, have gone through a fairly deep either research or development sort of phase as well. And really the objective of Beanstalk is to help advance their commercialization prospects and preparation and make introductions to people who will help them continue on their journey, hence today's conversation. I just wonder to kick us off for AMA, and I'll ask Brett also to help while my dogs are barking in the background. I'd like, and then get ready to ask your questions, but maybe Emily, you could just kick us off. You talked a lot about making introductions between startups and the industry, and I'm sure that you deal with lots of early stage concepts and you see a lot of things that come across your desk. Maybe you could just get us rolling with a few comments around the challenges and opportunities you see for early stage ventures trying to tap into sort of more established industries and sectors.
Yeah, so I guess some of the current challenges we've seen with startups entering into the dairy industry, I guess, have been things like really trying to understand the dairy landscape in Australia. So for a lot of internationals, that's a key challenge. Even for the domestic innovators, I think that has also been a key challenge. Dairying in Australia is quite diverse. We have a number of different regions covering different geographical locations, different climates, different styles of production systems. So to be able to find innovations that suit a broad range of those parameters is quite challenging. But also understanding, I guess, the real need of solutions in particular areas has been we've found quite challenging for some innovators as well, in terms of really understanding what they're trying to solve for and if it's an actual problem that farmers have. So I think that connection between understanding what farmers are struggling with and what your solution is needs to be addressed really early on. That's one. Feel free the rest of DA jump in if there are other things. But
I think that's a really good point. Sorry, Justin. You go.
I'll just ask this quickly, and then Andy, you can continue. This question of understanding farmers' actual problems, is something that comes up all the time and can be a real challenge for innovators to tackle. So, any more thoughts on that, and/or how Dairy Australia kind of understands the problems of the industry themselves and the farmers would be really interesting to shed a little bit more light on.
Yeah, well, I mean, Dairy Australia has a lot of direct contact. We have a lot of different forums and in which we touch base with farmers directly. So we have that through our annual process of looking at our what do we call it now? Our annual investment planning. So we do a lot of consultation with industry to understand what's happening in each region. We have a lot of forums which are directly in each of the regions, directly with farmers, and events which cover discussing what their key issues are in those particular regions or areas. We have a lot of industry related ones. So Alyssa, Jay, Andy are all part of different forums that cover what we're struggling with. We also conduct a lot of surveys looking at what currently farmers are doing, but also what are their major challenges at farm level in those particular in whatever particular area we're surveying in. So it could be around animal health and welfare, or it could be around, disease management or whatever it is. So we get down to being quite specific in things like that as well.
Right. Andy, sorry for interrupting you before. Do you want to launch in?
Oh, no, you're right. I was just going to probably just emphasize the question that you asked, is that in a past life, I've seen a lot of these kind of technologies fall down at the starting point because they're trying to fit a solution to a problem instead of finding out what the problem is and defining a solution for it, or creating a solution for it. So yeah, it was the question you asked anyway. So all good.
Yeah, right. And then just the last question before I'll just throw it totally open, and any of the innovators can just raise their hands in teams, and then we can go through question by question. We'll just do one question at a time. Like Caitlin, you're more than welcome to ask 10 or 15 questions, but we'll just do one at a time, I think, so we can sort of keep cycling around. So I guess just what I'd be keen to know, because I don't know the answer to this, is that when working with early stage startups, like what are the types of things that Dairy Australia can support them with? Is it knowledge or insight, or what the R&D or funding kind of mechanisms, or just like what are some of the things that some of our innovators might not be aware of?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the things that we can assist with upfront is market and industry knowledge. So if there's particular areas that you want to know about, we can provide that sort of information. So I had one recently around pivot irrigation systems and where are they located around Australia? What are those key regions and things like that. So, it can be quite specific, can be quite broad. The other thing we can provide early on is, depending on, I guess, what stage your innovation's at, connections to industry partners. If you're looking for particular information, it could be other things also. Eventually, if you get down the track where your innovation is, I guess, somewhat validated, or you have enough data behind you, we can provide assistance in validation at industry level.
Mm-hmm.
So we partner with some of our research institutes or commercial farms to be able to test and trial your technology in a structured way with you guys. We also, dependent on the technology and the relevance for the industry, can provide funding, not in the format of grant funding, but potentially funding for research purposes or funding for equity. So we're not adverse to that. We're not like Dairy Australia isn't like Grains or Cohort Innovation and things like that, where we've got a venture fund. We go on a case-by-case basis, so it's very dependent on the technology and the relevance to industry. There's a myriad of different things that we can offer. First and foremost, we offer non-financial, things to companies, and then dependent on where you are and the relevance to industry, then we look at financial assistance.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Thanks for that, Emily. I mean, we'd love to see a venture fund within Dairy Australia, but maybe down the track one day. Okie dokie. Who wants to jump in with the first question? And then Brett, I think I might allow you to facilitate or call on people and keep going. Who's the first one?
All good.
First cab off the rank.
There is a question in chat, Justin, from Caitlin.
Yeah, happy to jump in. I just thought I'd put the wording in there because there's lots of questions. So, and some of them, happy to go offline, to figure things out. It's just that, like, one of the challenges that we have is that, historically industries are, cautious about sharing volumes and compositions of liquid waste, because it has publicity implications. So that's traditionally made it challenging to actually understand what volumes are out there, what's their composition, how are they currently being managed. But there's been a lot of increase in transparency, I think, in a lot of industries, because people are, okay, how do we find the solutions if we're not talking about it? And so I'm trying to work out, like, what's the best sort of go-to place for specifically for the dairy industry. Like, would it be talking to individuals, or is there, a particular regularly released report that we could look at that would have that kind of information about, volumes, composition, different types of liquid wastes, how they're currently processed, whether there might be interest in people saying, yeah, I wish I could be harvesting, this particular resource out of my liquid waste. So yeah, just those questions listed in the chat there. I was just keen to know, where do we go to sort of try and seek that information? Thanks.
So I can maybe.
So I might kick off. So Caitlin, when you say liquid waste, that is a very broad term. And ultimately, how much data we have, if we have any data, and how it is available or not, really depends on what you're talking about. So, for example, if we're talking about post-farm gate dairy processor waste, we have Dairy Australia coordinates what's it called? Dairy Manufacturers Sustainability Council, which is like a forum of all of the sustainability managers for all of the dairy processing companies. And for that post-farm gate processing waste, that's a great place to start, where we can provide an introduction, maybe an email request, see who wants to participate in getting some knowledge there. For farms, we don't have good, robust public data on liquid waste at a farm level. But and again, it would depend what you're talking about. So if, for example, you're talking about liquid manure wastes, then we would start with hooking you up with maybe some of our interested more intensive system farmers. So we're seeing more farms go to a housed system for productivity benefits, which then presents opportunities with the more concentrated liquid manure waste that they might be interested to talk to you about. So that would be on a kind of a more of a one-on-one type basis. Jay, I think you were going to contribute something.
Yeah, thanks, Alyssa. That's a really good context setting that you've done there. We've also got another member of our team who's Kath Leskin. She's our national lead for soils and water. So she does a lot of extensive work in effluent management. So effluent is really what Alyssa was referring to as liquid manure. We did have a forum late last year where we are starting to look at our national strategy on effluent research and development. So where are things at right now? What are the gaps in there, and what future research is required? So, I think that could be an area to start, where once we have that strategy done and published, it could be a good starting point to try and understand where the gaps are within the industry. But there is a fair bit of work in this effluent space that is ongoing, also with other research partners in universities and so on. So it is a hot topic. As Alyssa mentioned, there's a trend of farmers moving towards that intensive farming systems, which is where capturing manure and managing it and separating solids and liquids actually becomes a really critical issue.
Awesome, thank you. That's amazing. And yeah, like definitely the effluent waste in the context of say with through the beanstalk process, we're exploring a particular product for urea separation. So if you wanted to recycle urea, so that would be super interesting. I'd love to know about the strategy once information's available, and talk to individual processors as well about their sort of interest in harvesting things from wastes. We have been asked before about say, for example, harvesting particular target proteins from liquid wastes and whether that would be feasible. So that's why it's like, we don't know what we don't know about what's out there in terms of the volumes and compositions, and just dream that someone would just create this overview and go, here's an overview. Now you can think about where there's opportunities in terms of the liquid waste processing. But yeah, those suggestions are great. Thank you for for that information. Thanks.
Great question, Caitlin. Thanks for that. John, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks. My question is how Dairy Australia would assess the, I guess my biggest challenge is the value proposition of my invention. It's it's not saving money or producing extra funds like that, but it's enabling technology. And one thing it would enable for farmers is to potentially access nature positive markets or niche branding type things. So what I'm interested in finding out whether Dairy Australia see a future or merit or funding priority for accessing either nature positive markets or niche markets that demonstrate that milk is sourced in an environmentally sustainable manner that's consistent with biodiversity.
Again, I might start. So the emergence of nature positive, what's it called? Task Force for Nature related financial disclosures and subsequent flow on implications for markets and reporting is something that where Dairy Australia is keeping a watching brief on at the moment. We've been doing a lot of work with the mandatory emissions reporting requirements flowing through, and so taking a lot of learnings from that process to try and influence the outcomes and what it means for farmers. So ultimately where we're trying to get to strategically is that requirements for nature-based reporting will be practicable and cost-effective and useful for farmers as another tool to understand their own business efficiency. And that's the same approach that we're taking with the emissions reporting requirements that are starting to impact the industry. So I took some notes, John, when you were talking before. And so in terms of nature positive market potential, what I foresee likely to happen is that we'll end up in the same place as we're at with carbon markets, right? Which is for 95% of farmers, there is likely to be more business value to be gained from keeping those credits and savings and benefits within the supply chain rather than selling them outside of the supply chain, right? Because your credits you can only count once, right? I can't sell my carbon credits to BHP and then also tell Fonterra that I'm selling them low carbon milk, right? So there's a lot of work in that space at the moment. It's not there yet with the nature positive stuff, but it's likely to get there. While there are, in some other markets, we are seeing some products that are able to get a premium as a low emissions milk or whatever. But we don't see that as a huge long-term potential for the market, because as we've seen, for example, with organic products, there is a small and declining premium and market that's able to be retained in that. So what we're looking at really for both emissions and the nature positive stuff is really supporting the supply chain to meet their targets, and in supporting farmers to access things like better insurance premiums or better interest rates at the bank if they meet certain criteria. And so in terms of the nature positive stuff, where we would like to see it go is that we are focused on, say, 3 or 4 key metrics that we can get good data from cheaply, that will be able to have a productivity or other co-benefit for the farmer, as well as meeting the requirements of the banks or governments or whoever the regulator market access body is in a particular circumstance. Is that useful? I know it's all a little bit vague at the moment because it's still so up in the air, but that's where our strategic thinking is going at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Alyssa. I won't hog any more of your time. I'll just write something in the notes. But yeah, thanks for that.
Awesome. Thanks. Really good info there. Any other questions? I guess one from me is I'm interested in that virtual fencing space. I guess what sort of trends you're seeing there and challenges you're seeing in that part of the industry.
I guess that's one for me. Yeah, look, I mean, trends are that there's currently 3 dairying states that don't allow virtual fencing. The regulations prevent its use because they're electric shock devices. That's how they're categorized. But there are states, well, there's one predominant dairy state where it is allowed, and that's Tasmania, which is about 10 to 12%, I think, roughly, of production for Australia. And they've seen a really rapid uptake of virtual fencing there. I think about 20% of cows in Tasmania are on the halter system, and about 200 or 300, I think 300,000 cows are on it in New Zealand, and it's been quite successful there. So I guess that's the trend, is that the farmers really want it, or they really want at least the option to have it, even if the economics may or may not stack up for them, but they certainly want access to it. And all 3 of the states that don't currently allow virtual fencing are actually undergoing legislation reform in their welfare legislation. So it's a perfect time to be having the discussions, and we've been providing technical policy support to advocacy groups to be able to advocate for a change in the legislation to allow these technologies. To be honest, that I think it's a question of when, not if. I think all New South Wales and Vic are a fair way along the pathway to this, and so is SA. So I think it will be a technology that's available in those 3 states quite soon, in the next couple of years. And there are already a number of players, I guess, sniffing around to launch once there is more available market. So you've got Halter, obviously, it's already got a footprint. You've also got other like Fence, No Fence, the Gallagher product, Shepherd, that are all kind of, they all actually gave evidence to the New South Wales inquiry recently. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the trends. Yeah, happy to answer any questions. I see Callum's got one, so go ahead, Callum.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Cal?
Yeah, cheers, Andy. I was wondering a little bit, and kind of maybe a broader question around like Dairy Australia as well, and startups, is a little bit how you tackle startups working in areas where regulation, isn't necessarily clear, and who are the kind of point people you really go to for understanding that regulation? Because it's something which, we've like tried speaking to a lot of, different stakeholders, and no one really seems too clear about, the exact definitions of different technologies and stuff. So yeah, really interested to kind of hear about with kind of new regulation and gray areas and stuff about like really who are people able to decipher that information and kind of give a clear answer on it.
Well, that's kind of my job actually at Dairy Australia in terms of understanding the policy space. We're not here to support one particular technology over the other. We're funded by levy payers. We're here to support the dairy industry and improve their profitability, productivity, right? So if there's a technology that's not being able to be accessed by dairy farmers, that for no good reason, or for, there's reasons that would justify its use, then we're here to provide technical policy support to allow for access to that technology. We don't advocate directly. We're match funding through government, but we provide the evidence base so that advocacy groups can have those discussions. So in terms of so one of my roles is actually understand the regulatory landscape for virtual fencing. So I can have a separate conversation with you if you like, because it's a long conversation probably. If you want to have a conversation about that, and I can provide some documents that give you an overview of where we're at. But yeah, like I said, I think it's more of a question of the regulators are concerned about regulating for the lowest common denominator. So there's some really, really good technologies available that have the appropriate welfare safeguards in place, so that, for example, a cow's not getting repeatedly shocked, or if a cow, there's some to prevent malfunctions that cause adverse welfare impacts. And the technologies that are currently available have really, really good safeguards in place. But if they were just to allow, yes, virtual fencing is allowed and there's no guidelines within the regulation, then it's the Wild West, and you could have products that come in that don't have those safeguards that ruin it for everyone else. And we really want the technology, but we don't want it to be disallowed again, basically, yeah, if that helps. But I'm happy to have a separate conversation. I'll put my email in the chat, and feel free to set up a time, because yeah, there's plenty to talk about on this.
Yeah, thanks. No, I would love to. Thanks for that.
Yeah, awesome. That's very generous, Andy. That's really awesome. Sarah, you've got a question as well?
Oh yeah, just my question was just about whether, because I understand Dairy Australia has their own breeding program, and farmers can breed for disease resistance in their animals. I think I know of mastitis as being one of them. So I was just wondering about worms and how big of impact worms is. I know liver fluke is, but I was just wondering whether you see, like, is there worth having any follow-up discussions based on what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think so. I guess I have a question for you as well. Is the saliva test, is it a genomic evaluation, or is it some other biological marker that you're looking for?
Yeah, it's just a phenotypic marker at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay.
then,
Sorry, you're right. You go.
Oh, so the way it works is we measure it, or the farmers will measure it, and then they'll send it to sheep genetics, who will do the genetic analysis to generate a breeding value.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the barrier I see in dairy is that there's no database of phenotypic evaluations to actually develop a breeding evaluation for resistance to worms. It is a problem in young stock. It's not a problem as cattle mature, they develop an innate resistance to worms. So it's not a problem in older stock, or not a significant problem, but it is a problem in young stock. So, but as you said, and rightly said, there's a heap of genomic evaluations available in dairy for productivity, fertility, and obviously and health traits as well. And the issue with trying to establish one of those genomic evaluations is that you need a lot of phenotypic information to develop that. And so there wouldn't be that easily available database of worm resistance for dairy, which would be a barrier, I think, for a genomic evaluation to that. Jay, unless you've heard of something ongoing for that, I'm not aware of anything in that space, though.
No idea. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Andy.
No worries.
Thanks. Does anyone else have questions? If not, I can jump in with another one.
I know Mark had a kind of implied question during his introduction, just about, you were asking about the risk of feral species and stuff for dairy. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah, I guess just in general terms, I'm assuming one of my base assumptions is that for dairy, most of the properties are fenced, and you would have, less impact from feral animals, pigs, wild dogs, that sort of stuff. Is that a fair assumption, or is there a significant impact from feral animals?
Yeah, you do have some farms that have issues with pigs and deer and stuff like that. I mean, I guess the issue with your technology being based at a gate is that the ferals don't tend to use gates. They're not very polite in that way. So I don't know how that affects with how your technology works, but it may not solve that problem. But it's not as big, like wild dogs, for example, is a huge problem further up north in sheep properties, etc. That's not a massive problem in dairy, but there is issues with ferals and even just kangaroos and stuff, damaging fences, that sort of thing. To be honest, when I heard your overview of your technology, the first thing that came to my head was individual animal identification, which has been a tough nut to crack with computer vision in dairy. And I would have thought that would actually be a value proposition for that in dairy rather than ferals. And if you're able to accurately identify individual animals in large groups, that's been something that's been a challenge for computer vision technologies for dairy. And then if it does BCS as well, there's potential value there, automated drafting, that sort of thing. So that was something that popped to my head when you mentioned yours, but maybe not so much ferals. But Jay, what are your thoughts on that tech?
Andy, I reckon what you've mentioned, look, I'm no expert in this at all. You'll know a lot more about this than me. So what you mentioned at the end in terms of the two specific, I guess, issues that can be solved, that sounds about right. And ferals, anecdotally, I've heard a lot about deer problem, especially in Victoria and parts of Victoria. But again, I don't know how practical it would be to solve for that particular one. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. That's really good information. I might reach out again in the future just to nail down on some of those other, requirements, as you say, understanding the farmer's actual problems instead of providing a hammer and looking for all the nails.
Sounds good, Mark. My email's on the chat. Happy to chat separately.
Yeah, awesome. Nice one. Any other questions? Right. Well, I will ask a quick one. So I guess getting new technologies on farm is really difficult for startup founders. Firstly, the pathway getting to the farmers, and then at what level they're willing to trial new technologies. I guess from your experience in the dairy industry, where do you see the most traction that startups get with farms in getting those initial trials happening? Is it through a partner? Is it going direct to the farm? And what's their appetite for trialing new technologies?
I think that's quite varied, to be honest. In terms of our position on that, we tend to like technologies being validated to reasonable extent before we would introduce those types of technologies to farmers. Just because they're busy enough as it is, they've got enough on their plates to worry about, and they don't need to be bombarded by every technology that comes out that requires testing or trialing on farm. Where our position also is that whilst we're technology, or we're agnostic in terms of the companies that produce the technologies, where we do see technologies that have we believe have significant benefit for the industry, we would work with those companies, and we do work with numerous companies to trial their technologies in controlled environments with our industry partners, so that we can provide the confidence. The science has been done by the industry and industry partners, and we can then, present that to industry or farmers in a confident way to say that this particular technology, irrespective of who's manufactured it or created it, is something that would benefit your farm or whatever else it is. And then we have multiple forums in which we would then present that. So we have forums where we connect directly with our top 40 largest farms. Those particular farms are more likely to be the ones that would commercially adopt or lead the way in adopting technology. And then depending on the type of technology it is and how far down the track you are, we also do connect with our top 5 largest corporate farms, which have more ability to trial and appetite to trial various technologies because they've got so many different farms in so many different regions. So there's a number of different ways we can do that. But yeah, we tend to like to support technology that have a good level of science backed behind them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that, Emily. All right, any other questions? We've got a couple of minutes left, maybe time for one more.
The other thing I'd throw out there is if anyone from Dairy Australia has any other questions for the innovators. I mean, it was super interesting, Andy, you asking the question to Mark about his technology in a different application. The list of the innovators is in there. We've got the virtual fencing with the what do you call it, Callan? The stimulation model as opposed to the shock model.
Yeah, the muscle stimulation.
Muscle stimulation, yeah, that's right. Actually, Brett, I also saw a question from John about kangaroos as well. Maybe there's a question about whether their dairy farmers have a challenge in managing roos attracted to their green grass.
Yeah, John, did you want to ask that question?
Sure. So a lot of farmers who are practicing rotational grazing or trying to protect their food resource have kangaroos moving in from other farms or nearby national parks and things and removing that. And in order to get permits or public license, they require data. I'm just wondering whether that's an issue for dairy farmers, and if so, whether an automated system of actually counting the roos and demonstrating their impact could be beneficial.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I know it's a problem for some farms more than others. It depends where they are, of course, and different jurisdictional requirements for getting those permits that you mentioned. But I'd imagine there'd be some value in that, but I can't speak. It's not my area expertise. Sorry, pest control. Jay or Alyssa, do you guys have anything?
I wouldn't know. Sorry. We can try and find out internally, but at this point, I wouldn't know.
I think that's a question we'd have to put out through our regional services teams to get some more accurate information for you.
I have a question for Callum and Sam in terms of your muscle stimulation technology. How does it work?
Yeah, for sure. So we're currently in the trialing stage of this technology. So we've run some preliminary trials, but essentially similar to, I'm not sure if you've ever experienced like physical therapy, or even, they do it in kind of workouts and stuff, but they activate the muscles using low voltage electrical signals. And so we've actually been exploring the use of that technology to control cattle movement by activating kind of the neck muscles first, creating like tapping sensations on the neck as they're approaching boundaries, and then kind of working to like full muscle contractions as they kind of hit boundaries. So as an alternative to give them a bit more of a physical indicator about kind of boundaries, rather than necessarily using like Pavlov behavioral training and like sound and electric shock to kind of scare the animal.
This is a good question. I had the similar question, Emily. I guess if you look at the Holter technology as one example, I think the others are similar. Like the size of the pulse, we call it a pulse rather than a shock, because it's about 1/100th the kilojoules or joules, sorry, in capacity of the a conventional electric fence. And so you're right, it does use sound and then vibrational cues, or as well as vibrational cues before it emits a pulse. But is there any difference between that 0.18 joule pulse from, say, a Holter collar versus what you're describing? It sounds the same.
Yeah, so to be, I guess, maybe even a little bit contentious, I'd say I think that joules is a little bit misrepresentative, essentially what you feel, since the typical voltages of that are into the kind of kilovolts of your sending, which actually activates the pain receptors on an individual. And it's a really short pulse, so that, obviously the pain can be kind of reduced. But since you're activating those pain receptors, similar to touching an electric fence or anything, you feel that shock. However, what we're doing is we actually send a very low voltage. So we're talking about, 50, 60 volts to essentially through, kind of good conductivity to actually get contact with the muscles and not activate pain receptors, and actually do that kind of muscle contraction. So it's much more of a tactile sensation than necessarily activating any pain receptors. And it's used a lot for physical therapy, and actually has a lot of benefit with TENS and other kind of technology for that, for muscle repair and stuff.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. And when we catch up later, I'll talk you through some of the welfare, I guess, concerns that are preventing or have been proposed as to allowing the new technology in. But I guess one thing is that the Pavlovian training actually works quite well, so they don't actually end up getting many pulses. Most animals aren't getting any pulses within a few weeks of starting. So I guess the question is, if you're missing that initial sound or something like that, they're getting a little click all the time. So I don't know how that would sit from a welfare perspective, but yeah, we can discuss in more detail anyway.
Yeah, would love to. Cheers.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone. I think I might wrap us up here because we're just past the hour. And listen, really so grateful for everyone from Dairy Australia to come here. Some really interesting answers, some good ideas as well, and some good feedback. And thanks to the innovators for jumping in and being prepared to share more about their business and challenges and everything too. So I see. Thank you, Andy and Alyssa, both dropped their emails in the chat. It's very much appreciated. So you can always get in direct touch. And then if necessary, we can make any other connections ourselves. We'll probably follow up with you guys with Dairy Australia, just with any other questions or comments afterwards. But hey, thanks everyone for joining the session. I hope you have a great rest of the day and week, and we'll see you around. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good luck.
Yes.